Welcome to the U Lounge. This is your safe space for unfiltered conversations on weight loss and wellness. I'm Nicole McKee, weight loss coach and hypnotherapist.
And I'm Marianne Bell, weight loss coach and wellness mentor. We are both GLP-1 advocates, and together we've lost over 10.5 stone between us. And we're here to break the stigma around medical weight loss, share real experiences, and help you take back control of your health and wellness without judgment.
Each week, we'll bring you real talk on obesity, GLP-1 medications, lifestyle changes, exercise, psychology, and all the things that no one tells you about sustainable weight loss. There's no filters, no BS, just science, stories, strategies, and a little bit of sass that actually work for real women.
So if you're ready to rethink everything you've been told about weight loss, hit subscribe and join us inside the U Lounge.
Now let's get stuck into today's episode. Welcome back to the U Lounge. This is episode 2 and we are so excited to have you here. And today's episode we are titling Survival to Self-Worth, because this is all about our story, about why we chose GLP-1. Together, we have lost over 10.5 stone on our weight loss journey, and we are here to have unfiltered conversations about weight loss and wellness and make sure that we fast track your journey and you don't make the same mistakes that we did. So we're just going to get stuck in, right? And today, we want to really talk about our weight loss journey and give you a little bit of a flavor and a bit of a taste for exactly the journey that we've been on. And I know that you're going to resonate with some of it, because if you're here and you're listening to this, then you're obviously on this journey too, or you're thinking about being on this journey, or you're someone supporting someone else on this journey. So let us chat about it. Let's just get stuck in. So, Marianne, tell me, what was your earliest memory of weight being an issue for you? Let's start there.
So mine goes right back to being around about 8. So
Mm-hmm.
I started competitive sport when I was super young. So I was ice skating when I was 4 years old, like literally started walking and then was on the ice. And then I became a competitive rhythmic gymnast. And at 8 years old, I remember being weighed. So every Sunday, we would get weighed and lined up by our weight. So regardless of your age, height, build, or anything like that, it was just by your weight. And that was adults that were doing that to children. Um,
That's so damaging. Like, even when you're saying that, my whole body's like, oh.
yeah. And that has had massive impact on me because if we put on weight, you had to do laps around the hall or you had to go and do sit-ups. So there was punishment for putting the weight on. And even at that age, I knew that there was something not right about it. And because I never ever told my mum or my dad about it because I knew that they would not be happy.
Mhm.
But it was just something that we dealt with at gymnastics.
And
Um,
did your mum and dad go into gymnastics with you, or was gymnastics still this like it is now, like you're not allowed into the hall?
yeah, you just got dropped off
Okay.
and then picked back up. So they never came in. They never knew.
Hmm.
I do remember one time one of my friends had came to stay at my house
Hmm.
and she had mentioned that she'd been put on a diet by the coach. And I
Hmm.
remember my mum's reaction to that. And I
Hmm.
think that was one of the reasons why I was like, I can't say anything because my mum is not going to be happy about this.
Wow. So
So
what did
yeah,
that feel like for you?
to be honest, standing on the scale like pretty much until about a year ago, standing on the scales was something that I hated doing. Like I absolutely had like scale trauma.
Hmm.
Um and I know that a lot of people feel that, but it really did impact me. Like any other time I've tried to diet, if I stood on the scales and they didn't move or they went up, it really did give me just such an impact. So yeah, that has been completely damaging from that point of view. So yeah, my earliest memories of weight are go back to gymnastics, and I could go on about the various different situations around like reward. I would get told if during the competition, if I smiled and pointed my toes, I would get a Mars bar and all this kind of stuff. So it goes back a long, long time.
Mhm.
Um, and I was sharing with you, Nick, before we hit record about we also had to wear an elastic band around our waist to
Mhm.
to make us hold our tummies in tight and stuff. So yeah, a lot of kind of trauma has came from back in the competitive gymnastics, and that's just been the catalyst to a lifelong issue.
Yeah. And I think like I can totally resonate with that, not from a competitive sports point of view, but for me, I remember like my earliest food memory is 3.
Mm,
And I remember being told that I was a good girl for finishing my plate and like finishing what was on my plate and finishing seconds of what was on my plate. And I remember feeling overly full and completely stuffed,
yeah.
but being celebrated for that. I also remember, like you, being rewarded with food. So if I was having a tantrum and I stopped crying, somebody would get me sweets. Or if I was somewhere, and I just want to say at this point, I mean, I love my family. I think they're incredible. And the women in my family did not know that they were doing this. And
Mm,
I'm sure many of you listening are exactly the same. We didn't know this at this point. But they would like at dinner times and things, it was always finish everything on your plate or you don't get a pudding.
yeah.
Or like a lot of my food beliefs were the whole thing of, oh, there's children starving somewhere, so you better eat all your food, or basically you're going to starve too. And I think all of these perceptions just led me to overeat and to overindulge and have no control. And that feeling of I need to be really full and stuff myself to be a good girl stuck with me. And then when I went into like school, I was a bigger child. And then we'd go to PE and I couldn't run about like the other kids, or I'd get really red in the face and I'd be bullied for that. I'd be bullied for being fat. I'd be bullied for being unfit. So I
Yeah.
started to see exercise as like the enemy, as something that I wasn't good at, as something that I was shamed for. And it created huge shame around my body. I was also at that age, we had to wear shorts, right?
Yeah.
Even through high school, you had to wear like the gym kit uniform was like white shorts and a red t-shirt, which is wholly unflattering for any female. I mean, I don't know anybody that wears white shorts and absolutely rocks them and gets away with them. However, well, maybe now we do, right? But I remember at the time thinking, are you kidding me? Like I've got and this is before fake tan, right? So I had the whitest pastiest corned beef legs and and I had to wear tight white shorts. And I used to come up with every excuse under the sun not to do PE because I was just like, this is horrific. Like I
Mhm.
am being totally like torn apart every single week that I have to get in a PE kit and it's horrible. So yeah, you just then go through your teens and into your adult life with all of these beliefs around food and exercise and your body.
Yeah.
And like for you, having to wear an elastic band around your waist to like keep you sucked in,
Yeah.
like
And that was
what?
that was something that I actually forgot about until very
Hmm.
recently when I was speaking to a girl that I used to do gymnastics with, and she reminded me of it.
Hmm.
Um, and as soon as she said it, I was like, "Oh my God, yes! Oh, I totally forgot about that." And I subconsciously always hold my stomach in.
Hmm.
And it's absolutely because of that elastic band. So yeah, it's something that has lasted. And just to touch on you were talking about um you were the good girl if you finished your plate. Like that, I think is very common in many,
Yeah.
many families. I was very lucky that my family didn't. I was never ever kind of asked to finish a plate.
Hmm.
I was encouraged to eat until I was full, and once I was full, they would maybe say like have one more bite, but I was never told to finish a plate. But I remember going to a caravan holiday with a friend, and her mum was very much a you cannot leave this table until you finish the plate. And I phoned my mum and dad afterwards and was like, you have to come and collect me. I'm being force fed.
But it's so true, right? It's so true. And even now, I go through a continual like disagreement with my family when it comes to my kids because we don't have food rules. We don't have the you can't eat because it's too close to dinner, or you can't eat that thing, or this is good and this is bad. Like, we don't have any of that. So, as far as my kids are concerned, if they want to have ice cream before they have dinner, well, food is food. They will have what they want. They will have what their body tells them. And yes, it can be really frustrating as a mum that I'm cooking a dinner and my kids are eating an ice cream, and I know they're probably only going to eat half of it, but I've got really good at meal prepping and saving leftovers and getting inventive with ways of not wasting food,
Yeah.
but allowing everybody to have what they want as and when they want it. And very often, even just the other day, I was in the supermarket with my kids and we were picking movie snacks. And my 8-year-old, or nearly 8-year-old, straight away was like, "Oh, can I just get a big punnet of raspberries and a big punnet of strawberries and those Tesco's finest blueberries, Mum?" And I was like, "Absolutely, you do
Yeah.
you." Um, and I feel like I was never taught that. It's not that food was ever scarce. It's that you would then be punished for not finishing what you had taken, or even if it was maybe 3 o'clock and 3:30, you'd got in from school and you were starving. Like, did you ever have that ravenous feeling when you got
Mm.
in from school? And I'd be told, no, you can't eat because you'll be getting dinner at 5 o'clock, or and I think things like that just made me very fearful around food. It made me like, I have to finish what's on my plate or I'll be punished.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people feel like that you have to overeat to be accepted.
And how are you dealing with that being on GLP-1? Because obviously you have the food suppression, you possibly can't physically
Yeah.
eat it all. And how does that make you feel when you're like, how have you transitioned from feeling like you have to eat all of it to being comfortable to leave?
So I actually, before I even went on GLP-1, I used hypnosis to heal that part of my food relationship because in many of my weight loss hypnosis, in my release program, which is my weight loss program, I talk about you are now comfortable to leave food on your plate and to tune back into your body's fullness and hunger cues. Because what that teaches us is to disregard our fullness cues, right? Whereas with hypnosis, I was able to tune back into that. So actually, it's been quite a smooth transition for me because I was already purposely leaving food on my plate. Like, my brain would be saying to me, you're not going to eat all of this. So you eat until you're full and you eat slowly.
Yeah.
And doing that really helped me heal. Whereas now, like, I know that I'll take something to eat, even if it's for example, a bagel thin and some eggs. I can be really, really hungry and I'll make a normal portion because obviously I want to get my protein in, hashtag build muscle. But at the same time, as I'm eating it, sometimes, with GLP-1, you will just take the ick.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
out of nowhere, you'll be like, no, I'm taking the egg ick.
yeah.
And it happens, right? So then I'll be like,
I
oh,
totally had that the other day with scrambled egg.
yeah, why is it an egg thing?
I don't
Um,
know.
or like runny yolks. I love a runny yolk, but for some reason on GLP-1, I'm like, ugh. Um, so I just got really used to leaving food on my plate and making sure that I wasn't overstuffing myself. But this is the first time, and I'm nearly 40, this is the first time in my adult life that I have ever been able to listen to my body and to tune back into hunger and fullness cues. How wild is that?
Yeah, yeah.
Crazy.
It's it's funny because I've knock the knock the table. Um, so I've never really had that issue. So
Hmm.
even like, for me using GLP-1 hasn't really been for that point of view because I'm not
Yeah.
I am pretty good at like feeling full and stopping. It was all the other parts for me with the GLP-1. So the
Yeah.
food noise, the constant cravings, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely it does help. Like obviously I feel fuller quicker and all of those kind of things. But
Hmm.
I am like I've always been pretty good at saying, right, I've had enough, I can stop. Um, so yeah,
So
it's interesting.
obviously your story is slightly different to mine, right? Everybody's got their own story,
Yeah.
and 100%, like I get that some of this will resonate with some and not others. But like in your house, did you have any food rules? Like, did your family talk about food or diets or anything like that? Was there any um I'm going to say body shaming, but I don't mean that against your family. I just mean, did you feel any way
Yeah.
about food or your body at home?
So for us, like my mum has been on yo-yo diets all her life, right? So
Hmm.
we as a family have always, always, always talked about diet restriction, eating healthy, blah blah blah. Um, so that's always been a conversation that's been around. My When my mum was younger, she was very much you can't like my nana would say you can't have this. So she was very much restricted. So she was the opposite with me. If I wanted something, I could have whatever I wanted.
Hmm.
And again, like one of my earliest memories was my dad somehow acquired a whole load of chocolate bars. Um, and it was all under, we used to have a sofa bed that had like a storage bit, and this storage section was full of every chocolate bar that you can think of. And I was allowed to just help myself. And I remember like the feeling of excitement, being able to go and like see how much was still there. And if my friends came round, it would be like, oh, come and see. And that sense of kind of excitement and joy and happiness of going and getting however many chocolate bars I wanted. So there was never any restriction from that point of view. Um,
But isn't it interesting, right? What you just said there about the happiness you feel about the abundance of food and
yeah,
talking about when your friends come round and being able to show them like all of these chocolate bars. It
yeah,
leans into that like fundamental human need of love and belonging,
yeah,
right? So it's almost like even though we might think that, oh, that didn't have an impact that way, it had an impact on a different level, right?
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And again, like most people, food was you a time to celebrate or a time of sadness or stress or whatever. Every time my dad went into hospital, that was a trigger for us to, like me and mum, to have a
Hmm.
takeaway or go and get a McDonald's or,
Yeah.
for like McDonald's equaled dad's in hospital and poorly and we're too stressed to go and make food.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's there's so many things in the past that I've kind of built up to where I've eventually got to.
And I think it's the same with most people who are now suffering with obesity, right? We talk about, and this is why I want to say, if you're here and you have obesity, remember it is not your fault, right? There is so much else going on round about you that creates your food perception, your food noise, all of these things that then culminates in your relationship with food being good, bad, indifferent, and building how it is. So it's hugely impactful, I think, when you realize it's not your fault. Like it's not. And I think when we're in an obese body, there's so much shame that comes with it, right? And we forget that all of these different parts actually add to, they fuel the fire, they fuel the obesity fire, right? I remember when I was just four, going to a friend's house for dinner, and her mum was on a diet, and we were all sat at the table eating food, like our whole family, and her mum was there too, but all she was eating was an apple. So
Mm.
everybody had a plate of food apart from the mum who was just sat eating an apple. And I remember that at only four, like totally taking that on. Well, if you want to lose weight, you must have to just eat apples, right?
Mm.
Um, and then I remember a little while later, this must only be literally, I must have been about eight, and I was at a family party. And like you, we're very much if you celebrate, you eat. If you are sad, you eat. If you like all the things, you just eat. Okay. Somebody makes food. So I remember being at a family party at Christmas, and a distant relative, there was like a vegetable strudel on the like spread. You know, when they do like a Christmas spread and it's like all the foods. There was a vegetable strudel, and I picked up a bit of that and put it on my plate. And the family friend said, "Oh, you shouldn't be eating things like that. You need to lose weight. You're a bit chubby."
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, like, things like that, these are
Yeah.
from people outside of my
Yeah.
family, right? So, I want to say that as well. Like, we can be so impacted
Yeah.
in the home, but we can also be massively impacted through interactions like this.
Yeah.
And
And h how old were you then?
I must have been 7 or 8.
Yeah. Did you not once tell me that through your psychology um that that age group, like kind
Mhm.
of 6 till 8 kind of thing, when things happen, they form like a kind of trauma response? And I might have said that wrong, so correct
Yeah.
me.
No, no, 100%. So, our brains are the most malleable up until the age of 7, right? And even probably up to the age of 10, things like that stay with us. So your childhood responses and your perception that you take on to things like this, to things that mean that you don't belong, or to people putting you down and shaming you, or things that mean that you're not good at it. How many of us have a belief that we're not good at something because we've been told it in our childhood that we're not good at it, right? And we take that with us, and sometimes these are the root causes of
Mhm.
what then cause us to be obese in later life, and it can trigger it can trigger that trauma response. So for me, I and I don't want to overshare at this point, but I also want to say when I was younger, my a certain dynamic within my family, my dad was extremely abusive. And sorry, trigger warning for anybody who's listening to this. I will not go into detail. However, on a Friday night, he would leave to go to the pub, and my mum and I would get like a chippy tea. And and we'd basically breathe a sigh of relief that he was gone, right? And what that would signify for me, again, as a young child, was that food was comfort, food was freedom from like the bad man, food was like connection with my mum, like that time that was just us. So I built all of these food beliefs at such a young age, like pre 8 years old, that has then molded my
Mhm.
life and my relationship with food. So when I do the work with someone in hypnotherapy and we go back to root cause, I can normally pick out so many things about their food belief that then is the consequence of them then being obese in later life. And it's so sad, but it matters so much how we speak to our children and how we speak to people around us. And this is why.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Nick.
That's okay. I feel like we have to share openly and honestly, right? Our food beliefs come far and wide. Um, so moving on then, what made you feel later in life? What what do you think triggered your obesity? What do you think triggered you putting on weight? So I know you've mentioned about the scale trauma, you've mentioned about the food and the kind of sweetie drawer and things like that. What do you think actually triggered you gaining weight?
I, I don't know, to be honest. For me, like I started gaining weight from probably well, I stopped doing gymnastics was
Hmm.
one, right? So I started obviously putting weight on, just because I wasn't training as much because I used to train like 6 days a week. Um, so when I stopped doing gymnastics at around 15, that's when I started putting weight on. And then it just didn't stop, basically. And I did every diet that there was. And I think if I hadn't gone through that yo-yo, I would have just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think as much as yo-yo dieting is not a great place to be, it's in some sense saved me from becoming morbidly obese. I
And we
think
don't
every
talk
time,
about this. We don't talk about this enough because I am so with you. Had I not been on that yo-yo diet train, I would have just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm so
yeah.
with you on that.
hmm I think it like every time I kind of got to like 15 stone, that's when I would be like, right, I need to try again. I need to try again. And I would
Mhm.
lose like 2 stone max. That is all I could ever lose was 2 stone. And then it would be back on. Um, and then I got to my biggest, well, actually, so I was going to say I got to my biggest just before I started my GLP-1 journey, but actually it was probably the year before because I then tried a gastric balloon and the gastric balloon didn't work for me. Again, like it obviously helps with the fullness feeling, but as I mentioned earlier, that was never really my problem. Like I am able to control how much I eat. Um, my problem was wanting all of the other stuff and the constantly thinking about food. If I had a cup of tea, I needed to have 3 or 4 biscuits with it. Gastric balloon doesn't solve that.
No, and we also know that when you have obesity, remember obesity is a disease, but when you have obesity, you are more likely in the emotional centers of your brain to crave fatty and sugary foods because your body is dysregulated and it's looking for fat, it's looking for carbohydrates, it's looking for the processed food, it's looking for a dopamine hit.
Yeah.
And we we don't always fully understand that, but we know from brain scans it's fully evidenced. We can see that when a craving hits and you're in an obese body versus you're in a regular BMI body, the craving hits harder. The activity in that part of the brain is higher. So when we're trying to explain to people who have never had obesity, who have never struggled with their weight. When you're trying to explain that overwhelming sense of like out of control and I need to have this thing with my cup of tea, like it takes over you. It takes over your every thought, every part of your body. It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I think like this is maybe a topic for another episode, but going back to that point around the dopamine hit, I
Mhm.
think a lot of people who are now on GLP-1 feel a sense of loss or like a sense of flatness. And
Mhm.
it's because they're not getting that dopamine hit from the same food triggers.
Yeah. And this is something, I mean, this is something I work with clients on is we look at natural dopamine. We look at their joy bubble. We look at the list of things that bring them joy that is not food related. And I know you and I have done this before. Like we look at all the other things. And very often, if someone is deep in obesity, then they can't think of other things that bring them joy apart from food. And actually, they've attached all their joy moments to food things like going out to eat or getting a snack or getting a dessert or having a glass of wine or like all of these things are just extra calories in the body. Um,
And
it's
how many
wild.
times in the, like, I don't know, maybe you didn't do this, but for me, like in the past, when I did any other kind of diet, if I lost half a stone or a stone, it'd be like, oh, let's go and get a Chinese to celebrate that you've done it, right? And
Yeah,
actually, since being on GLP-1, because I don't have the same cravings for those types of food, now when we're celebrating, we're a bit like, how do we celebrate? Because food doesn't do it for me anymore. So like what do I do to celebrate? And it's
that's
you
it. Yeah,
new
and
learning.
you're relearning who you now are. It's so different. But and this is I think gonna hit with a lot of people as well. I remember one of my mum's friends being constantly on a um like a slimming club diet, I'm just gonna say, right? Being on one of those diets and they used to get weighed every week. And what they would
And
do,
they
wouldn't eat all day, so when they got weighed, they were the lightest they could possibly be. And then they would come out of it and it was in like a church hall and they'd go next door and get a chippy and sit and eat it in the car.
yeah, that will absolutely resonate because like I know that that's what I used to do as well.
Right? Yeah. So everybody used to celebrate their weight loss with food, like it was the done thing. And for me, like I remember talking to you and saying, "What are you going to do when you get to Target?" Because I'm booking a hot air balloon ride. Like that was my whole Target thing. Because when I was obese, I always felt like I don't want to get in a hot air balloon basket because what if I'm too heavy for it? And now I'm like, oh, well, I'm just going to float away, right? Um. And it's thinking of these other things to celebrate yourself. Is it a spa day? Is it time with friends? And again, we associate time with friends of going for coffee and cake, but can you meet them for a walk instead? Like all these little hacks we put into place. But yeah, super interesting, super interesting. So I could talk about this all day, but what I want to know is you went through that stage and you put on weight and you got to your heaviest, what was your turning point? Like, what was was it your lowest point? Was there a turning point? Was there a literal line in the sand when you were like, enough is enough?
So it was New Year last year, so like New Year 23.
Hmm.
Um I wasn't making New Year's resolutions, but I had a word of the year, and my word was transformation.
Hmm.
And I had decided at that point I was going to give it one more chance and I was going to do everything in my power to do it. And if I couldn't lose weight, then fine, I was just going to have to accept that this is how I was going to be and I was going to continue on and live the happiest life obese.
Hmm.
So that was at the start of the year. I was like, no, I'm gonna do something. My mum had started hearing about Ozempic and all the other things that were going on in like America and the celebrities and all those kind of things. And I didn't know a lot about it.
Mm-hmm.
But my mum was like, I'm going to get it. I'm going to go. I don't know, don't care where I go. I'm going to get it. And I said, no, let me, let me do some research. Let me find out about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the trigger for me to start looking into it. At that same time, my dad was really poorly. He was terminally ill and coming towards end of life. So when mum and I were having the conversation around going on this medication, we had to completely weigh up the risks as well because it was relatively new in the
Mm-hmm.
UK. You know, there was obviously other types, but Mounjaro in particular was kind of new last year. Um, and we didn't know how we would react to it. We could have had side effects and things. So we did talk about what would happen, who would look after dad if something happened to us. So there was so many factors that we had to take into play. Um, but we decided to go ahead with it, and is honestly the best thing that we've both done. Again, like talking about emotional triggers, Dad passed away in May last year, and normally we would have 100% turned to food. That is how we would have dealt with it. Um, but we didn't because we don't have that same emotional or we don't connect to food or think about food in the same way as we
Mm-hmm.
did. So yeah,
Yeah.
what about yourself? What was your turning point?
Firstly, I just want to say I'm hugely sorry about your dad and thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. And grief is such a trigger for emotional eating as well, isn't it? So incredible that you could both be together and then not have that whole thing of piling on weight. I always used to say, you get these people who they go into like a stress response or they go into grief for something and they don't eat. I
Yeah.
was the opposite.
Yeah.
So if something happened to me, like I'm gonna eat my way through it. Like,
Yeah.
I always wished I was one of them that just didn't eat. But for me, my turning point, which is actually where we met, my turning point was Ibiza 2023, and I was facilitating on a retreat which you came along to Marianne. That's where we first met. And I remember feeling thoroughly uncomfortable that whole time.
Mm.
And I remember being away with incredible women, powerful women, facilitating change. There was a lot of hypnosis, a lot of like transformation that went on during that week. And it was incredible, but I felt like a bit of a fraud because I was the one helping all of these women to heal and to change and to transform their lives. And actually, I was dying inside. I felt so ashamed. I hated having to get dressed up. And I remember at one point putting on a dress and just feeling massive in it.
Mm.
Like, and when you're surrounded by women who are all in bikinis or they're in dresses and they're all dressed up and yeah, you want to support everybody and everybody looked phenomenal. But what it highlighted for me and for anybody who had come through COVID and put on a bit of weight and we didn't go on many holidays and we didn't go out and we didn't need to go on nights out, this was so confronting for me because this was literally like my stress response weight was just there. And I came back from Ibiza, changed myself, felt like not only was all of this incredible and all of these women were so powerful and accepting beautiful bodies, but I couldn't accept mine. And because I felt like a fraud, I was like, things have to change. I am going to embody exactly what I'm asking other people to. And I remember at this point, um, at this rock bottom point, thinking, I will never go on holiday that size again. And I received the professional pictures back from that retreat and don't get me wrong, the photographer was phenomenal, but she couldn't fix me in those pictures. And I remember looking at them and just feeling so disgusted and so deflated that I was like, what have you done to yourself? Like, what have you done? And that for me was my turning point. Obviously, I didn't start my GLP-1 journey till much later. And I used hypnosis to lose weight, lost 22 pounds using hypnosis, and then was hit a plateau, was confirmed as being in early POI, so premature ovarian insufficiencies, and as a result was struggling with perimenopause symptoms, which I'd been struggling with for a long time. And that's why I was really struggling to lose weight. It could also be why I'd put on a lot of weight because hormonally I wasn't supported. So when I sat with my GP and went through everything and got blood tests back, I was really looking at all my health markers. What can I do hormonally to support myself? What can I do from a vitamin and mineral point of view to support myself? Obviously, I've got a degree in dietetics and nutrition. Like, I know this stuff. But I had to sit and do a full health audit on myself to really see, right, where are you not supporting yourself? Where are you letting yourself down? And I had done a lot of research and I was at that stage, which I think many of us get to, where you are literally like, I will try anything.
Mm.
Like, I am so desperate for change here. Please, someone just help me with a solution, with an answer. I will try anything at all. And I'd healed my relationship with food, and I was still ongoing working with that. I was working on my emotional eating, and I felt really good. I felt really healthy, but I just couldn't get past this point. And we were going to Ibiza again in 2024 for another retreat. And I knew that I couldn't go back the same size as I'd been the previous year because it nearly destroyed me. And that's when I looked into GLP-1. I'd heard a lot about it. I'd heard a lot of really mixed up reviews about it, and I decided that I was going to trial it. And I remember being sat in Ibiza and saying to you, Marianne, like, I I'm
You know,
here.
'cause
Like
that
I
at that point, I had also started,
mhm.
and I think by the time we went to Ibiza round two, I think I'd lost maybe 3 or 4 stone at that point.
You lost 4 stone because I remember you coming on a call with me. And I said to you, I hadn't seen you for a few months, and I said to you, "Oh wow, can I ask permission to like ask you something personal?" And you said, "Yeah, of course." And I was like, "How much weight have you released? Because you're glowing." And I think that was a bit of a turning point for me as well in my own journey. Be like, right, we can all do this. Like we've got this. Um, so yeah, sorry, I interrupted you there. You were saying about Ibiza, but
Yeah, no, but at that point, I still hadn't told anyone that
yeah.
that is how had been on GLP-1 and that's how I lost it. So even on the call that you're talking about, when I think you asked if I had been doing anything then, and we'd had the conversation in Ibiza as well, and both times I just said, "I'm watching what I'm eating."
Yeah, but also something really interesting that you said to me as well was no one's actually asked me about my weight loss because you thought that everybody had just put it down to the grief of losing
Grieving.
your dad, and
Hmm.
um, so no one was actually asking you about it, so it didn't really feel like something you could be celebrating either, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And be open and honest about. And I think how many of us feel like we're ashamed of how we're losing weight, or you're scared to say to other people, especially with a GLP-1, whatever GLP-1 you're on, you're so ashamed to say to people because it feels, and for me as a hypnotherapist with a background in nutrition and dietetics, I remember feeling like people are going to think I'm a failure or I'm a fraud, or how can I take people through a weight loss hypnosis program and but be using a GLP-1 to support my weight loss. And I think this is the whole thing of I wanted to talk about it as in this is so much more and so much bigger than whatever modality you're using to lose weight, because actually you can support yourself in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Um, that I
And
had
and
to,
equally, I didn't want to have the conversation at that time because, well, I didn't know that obviously you were using GLP-1.
yeah,
And so at that retreat, we were amongst, numerous fitness professionals. And I didn't want to have to justify why I was using this medication. And obviously, it's it still has a lot of stigma around it as the easy way out and all those kind of things, which we'll come on to at another episode. But um yeah, like I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't want to have to justify why I was doing it.
yeah, agreed. And I think this is where so many are right now. So if you're listening to this and you're on a GLP-1 and you feel ashamed of it, we get it. We've been there too. We've kept it a secret. But how liberating is it when you open up about it, you talk to people about it, and actually you get the support that you need? Because we all need support in this journey, right? Um, So I feel like we have covered so much in this episode that, and I know it's probably opened up lots for other people and for future episodes too. But I just want to ask you, what's one unexpected thing that's happened to you since starting with a GLP-1, or what's changed since losing weight for you?
I think for me it's the confidence. I think a lot of people, like even when I was at my heaviest, a lot of people assumed that I was quite a confident person,
Hmm.
but it was masking. You
Yeah,
know, like I've grown up performing gymnastics. I was a theatre kid, like I know how to put on a show, but deep down inside I was like miserable. Um, and didn't want to be up front and center. And now I feel like I've got my true self back, and like I feel like I am able to actually be out there and be me, whereas I was always pretending to be someone else. So that's been the biggest change for me since losing the weight. And for
I
you?
love that. Yeah. So mine is actually really similar, and I know that we've spoke about this too, is that I've been a coach for many years and a hypnotherapist, and I was very much hiding away. Like I had this business, and each time I advertised or put myself out there, it would be successful, and I would make more money in my business, and then I would shy away from it because I'd be like, oh no, I don't want to be like out there and in front of people. So yeah, I'd say it's confidence. I'd also say it's self-worth.
Hmm.
So for me, I never really felt worthy to have an opinion, or I would be scared to have an opinion in case someone shamed me for my weight, or I'd just be quiet. Like I wouldn't speak up in meetings. Like when I was in corporate, I wouldn't speak up in meetings for fear of looking stupid or someone calling me out for how I looked. So I would just be quiet. Whereas now, I'm definitely not quiet, but it's given me a bit of a new lease of life because I think I spent so long people pleasing and trying to fly under the radar and trying to be the good girl, the accomplished, like high achiever, but not antagonize anybody. To now, I'm very much like, actually, I'm not out to piss people off. However, I have an opinion and I'm totally fine to share it. And I don't feel ashamed about any part of my journey. In fact, I want to put it out there to empower more women to be able to do things on their terms. And I think that part of it, that self-worth part of it for me has changed the game, has changed my life, has made me a better mum, a better wife, a better coach, a better therapist. Like I just feel like I'm worthy of it all just because I am, not because I'm a size or a shape. And I'm grateful to the version of me that was struggling deeply with obesity, but she kept going and she kept looking for a solution. And that for me, I look at her now and I think she was so worthy. Like she didn't even know the power that she had inside her. And she kept going, even when things were hard, even when she didn't feel good in herself, even when she felt like a failure or felt like she compared herself to others. She kept going. And that for me, the self-worth and the confidence that comes with that is just incredible. And if I
Yeah.
could bottle that and sell it, I'd be a friggin' millionaire by now. But right, that feeling is so good. So if this has resonated with you, I'd love to leave you, all the listeners, with a question of what weight loss stories are you carrying? So for us, we've shared like childhood memories, we've shared a lot about our journey, but what are you carrying with you? So I used to tell myself I can't eat that or I'll put on 10 pounds, or I can't like pastry. I can't eat pastry because it gives me it makes me put on weight. It gives me a sore tummy. Actually, no, it's just because I seen it as a bad food, right? I seen it as like a high
Mhm.
fat food. But actually, if you take into account everything else I was eating, it's probably a lot worse than that, right? But that pastry belief comes back to that memory when I was 7 or 8, and that woman said to me about that strudel, "Oh, you shouldn't be eating that. You're chubby." So it just shows you. I'd love for you to sit and unpack it. Come share it with us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, wherever you find us. And I just want you to know that we're here and you've got this. And it's time to go live life on your terms. Marianne, anything to say, any closing points?
No, I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to us as well, and actually taking this time for you as a little self-care moment. And as Nick said, feel free to share with us on any of our socials. Our DMs are always open if you want to reach out.
And we would love and be so incredibly grateful if you could share this episode or this podcast with one other person in your life or share it with multiple. We are so, so grateful because we want to remove shame and stigma, and we can only do that by reaching more people. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for your time, for your life currency, and go out there and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, this has been the U Lounge. I'm Nicole.
And Marianne.
Send you lots of love and remember, go live life on your terms. If today's episode spoke to your heart, your soul, or your mind, please share it with a friend who needs to hear it too.
We'd be so grateful if you could follow, rate, and leave a review. It helps more incredible people like you find this space.
Until next time, keep putting yourself first and remember, it's time to live life on your terms.